This 15th-century blueprint for a spiral rotor describes the physics of vertical lift centuries before the first engine was ever built. Leonardo documented these designs across 7,000 surviving notebook pages, using a right-to-left mirror script that remains legible only when held to a glass. He was born out of wedlock in 1452, a status that legally barred him from attending university or receiving a formal education in Latin and law. Being excluded from traditional academia forced him to rely on direct observation and a hands-on trade to understand how the physical world functioned. At age 14, he entered the workshop of Andrea del Verrocchio, learning the multidisciplinary craft of disegno, from grinding raw pigments to casting bronze and hauling festival scenery. While assisting his master on the Baptism of Christ, Leonardo was assigned the figure of the kneeling angel on the far left. As the highlight moves across the ear, technical analysis of this section shows a sharp departure from Verrocchio's technique. While the master used quick-drying tempera, Leonardo was already layering oil paints to create the soft, luminous textures visible in the hair and skin. This search for optical perfection frequently stalled his work. He began leaving early solo commissions, like the Adoration of the Magi, unfinished, as his curiosity shifted to the next problem. He developed a style capable of unmatched realism, but his inability to stop experimenting often prevented him from reaching a final brushstroke. In 1482, he moved to Milan and secured a position with Duke Ludovico Sforza, pitching himself as an architect of war machines rather than a court painter. During this period, he dissected 30 human bodies to map the internal ventricles of the brain and the precise mechanics of muscle movement. While Michelangelo focused his art on the raw, sculptural power of the male physique, Leonardo looked for the invisible systems of biology and light that govern the form. He'd argued that a painter could not truthfully represent a human figure without first mastering the hidden scientific mechanics beneath the skin. In The Last Supper, Leonardo anchored a scene of high emotional chaos with the perfectly symmetrical and calm figure of Jesus. The room's architecture follows a strict 12-6-4-3 ratio, a grouping reflecting musical harmony. He applied this to the figures, organizing 12 apostles into 4 groups of 3. This strict mathematics explains why he broke tradition, placing Judas on the same side of the table. Because Leonardo wanted the freedom to rework his shadows, he avoided the fast pace of traditional wet plaster fresco. Instead, he applied tempera and oil to a dry wall, a decision that caused the paint to begin flaking within his own lifetime. The experimentation that allowed for such delicate lighting and grouping also ensured that his masterpiece would physically decay almost immediately after completion. In the Mona Lisa, Leonardo refined sfumato, a technique of layering thin glazes to eliminate the hard lines that usually define a face. Modern spectral imaging reveals that the colors we see today are heavily distorted. Data measuring the aged rosin and mastic varnish shows a yellowing effect that hides the painting's original cool tones and depth. Historical debate continues over whether the sitter is a merchant's wife or Isabella of Aragon. Regardless of her identity, Leonardo carried this single piece of poplar with him for 16 years, never delivering it to a client. He continued to rework the glaze and shadow until his death, turning the portrait into a decades-long investigation of light and anatomy. In 1516, Leonardo accepted an invitation from King Francis I to spend his final years at the Château du Clos-Lucé in France. Because the French had previously invaded Milan and ousted Leonardo's patrons, some historians suggest his stay at Clos-Lucé was a form of luxury captivity, keeping his engineering mind under the king's control. Despite the legend that he died in the king's arms, his final years were marked by a severe stroke that completely paralyzed his right hand, ending his ability to paint. Leonardo da Vinci completed fewer than 20 paintings in his nearly 50-year career. His legacy remains in the thousands of notebook pages, where he proved that the laws of anatomy and engineering are the same laws that govern the art of painting.